Okay, hi, Cody and Ishmael. Today we're going to review what we looked at last lesson, and then we're going to start on a few other things to do with poetry, like how to express an opinion or write an opinion about a poem. So, if you can remember poems and what they are, so let's have a look at the screen. We've got poetry is a collection of words, so a group of words that's designed to help you create images or pictures in our minds. So a really well written poem, you should be able to almost have a bit of a picture or movie in your mind as you're reading it. You should be able to visualize it, so see it in your brain, what the poem is about. So the purpose of poetry, people write poems for all sorts of reasons. It can be for to say their feelings, it can be to describe a person, a place or a thing or an event. It can be to tell a story or to tell a message to the world, so say about the environment or about, again, your feelings for something. It could be in a political statement, so people could be getting angry at the government through a poem. So poetry and it's pretty simple to write for a lot of people. Some people find it difficult, so it's a good way to express an emotion. So last week when we looked at the structure of a poem, we learned that there was three main parts of the poem, and here is the title, Greedy Little Grace. Okay, Greedy Little Grace. So the first feature was the title. Okay, our first part of our text was our title. Underneath here you have by Andy Griffiths. Okay, so that part there, that is the byline. It's basically who the poem is by, so we called it a byline. Now these parts here, each one of these four, whoops, move those around. I can put a box around one. Each one of these stanzas or these paragraphs are called a stanza, or they can be called a verse, but mainly we call them stanzas. So there's one stanza, two stanzas, three stanzas, four stanzas in this poem. So to help the poet makes pictures in your mind by using language features. Our language features can take in a lot of things, and the ones we looked at last week were similes. We looked at similes and we looked at alliteration. So what is a simile? Now I sent you a handout via Illuminate with that one on there. A simile is when you compare two things using the word like or as. Okay, so using the word like or as, you're comparing two things. So for example, you can see on your screen right now examples of similes. For example, somebody may be as white as a ghost. There's the word as in there. White as a ghost. It's comparing the colour of somebody with a ghost. Somebody might be dumb like a post. So you're comparing somebody's intelligence or how smart they are to a post. So a simile will have the word like or as in it. So here's another one, as neat as a pin. So a pin is very shiny, silver, very sleek. So that's as neat as a pin. So your bedroom might look like that, or it might not. Somebody could be as strong as an ox. Okay, and so an ox is like a big bull. So as strong as an ox, you're comparing the strength of somebody to that of an ox. So that's a simile. We started making our own similes, and you did some yourselves last week. Similes are used a lot in poems. Alliteration. Now, alliteration is the easiest one of the language features to remember because it has the first sound of a group of words that are placed together. They all sound the same. So, for example, with alliteration, you'll have the repetition of the same sound at the beginning of a group of words. So have a look at this example here. Possums pick precious, poisonous, purple, prickly pineapples. So you can hear the repetition of the sound p, p. The same down here. A kind kangaroo kicks kids kitty kites. So repetition of the k sound. So it doesn't have to be that many. It could be as little as 3 and sometimes 2, like a slippery, slimy strawberry. It could be a ripe raspberry. The repetition of the r sound. So that's alliteration. Now, alliteration doesn't necessarily create pictures in your mind, but it makes the poem a lot more fun to read. Okay, so let's have a look at this poem here and find the alliteration. My puppy punched me in the eye. My rabbit whacked my ear. My ferret gave a frightful cry and roundhouse kicked my rear. My lizard flipped me upside down. My kitten kicked my head. My hamster slammed me to the ground and left me nearly dead. So my advice, avoid regrets, no matter what you do. Don't ever let your family pets take lessons in Kung Fu. By Ken Nesbitt. So there are 2 examples of alliteration in there. I don't know if you can remember them. There's one in this first stanza up here, in the first line, so hopefully you can pick it up. Puppy punched. In the second stanza, we have my kitten kicked. Kitten kicked. So repetition of the K sound. Now, another language feature is rhyme. Now this is the most common, or the one that's most popular in poems, is rhyme. So when lines of a poem rhyme, it's usually the last word of the poem, or the line, that will rhyme with another line. So they have the same sound. So for example, bat might rhyme with cat, sat, that, mat. So it's the same sound in that word at the end of a line. So we're going to read through this poem here, Greedy Little Grace, and you'll be able to hear where the rhyming is. So let's read the first stanza. There was a greedy little girl called Greedy Little Grace, who liked to shovel food non-stop into her greedy face. Her parents said, "Oh, Gracie dear, must you eat like that?" But Greedy Little Grace just laughed and ate the family cat. Meow. Her mother cried, "My lovely cat, I'm really going to miss her." But Greedy Little Grace just burped and ate her little sister. Ah. Her father yelled, "This gluttony is not good for your health." But Greedy Grace just licked her lips and then she ate herself. That's a strange one. So for each line, you probably won't hear rhyme in every single line, but let's have a look. Looking at the first stanza. There was a greedy little girl. Okay, so we're looking for something that might rhyme with earl, girl, called Greedy Little Grace. No. Who liked to shovel food non-stop. No. Into her greedy face. Okay, so right now we have the face and grace. The second line and the fourth line, they rhyme. So we can actually record this rhyming structure like this. Girl, if I can move this up. Girl, we'll call that A. We'll call that line A. Now we can see that no other lines rhyme with the word girl. Called Greedy Little Grace, we're going to call that B because it doesn't rhyme with the first one. We're going to call that line B. It's all on its own there. Okay, our next one. Who liked to shovel food non-stop? Now that doesn't rhyme with line A. It doesn't rhyme with line B, so we're going to call it C. Okay. Okay, line C. Into her greedy face. Now that line there rhymes with grace. So we're going to call it B because it has the same rhyming sound as line B. So this poem usually, or most poems, and this poem does, follows that same rhyming structure all the way through. So on this next stanza, you'll find that it's exactly the same. Here, dear, that's out on its own. It's our first line, so it automatically becomes A. So this should be B, that. Okay, one that rhymes with that is cat, so it's B. And laughed, it doesn't rhyme with A and it doesn't rhyme with B, so we need to call that C. Okay, so that's the way we record the rhyming structure in a poem. And you will find that stanza 3 over here and stanza 4 will follow exactly the same. So here's our lines be, her, and sister. Here, health and herself. Okay. Let's look at our next and our last language feature that we're going to learn. And it's a huge word. In fact, it's really tricky to say sometimes. And it's called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. Okay, so onomatopoeia. It's a really big word. And onomatopoeia is basically a word that sounds like its meaning. So pretty much you will see a lot of onomatopoeia in cartoons where you hear or you see the words wham, swish, boom, because they are actually words that pretty much sound like their meaning. So for example, this poem here, the game, clap, clap. The word clap, clap. It sounds like a clap when you say it. Clap, clap. Stomp, stomp. Okay, you can stomp your feet. The word stomp almost sounds like a stomp itself. Swish, swish. This is the way we get through our games. The crowd shouts, Yahoo! The ball soars through the air. Then bounce, bounce, bounce. The audience holds its breath. Swish, the ball goes in. We win. So swish is another example of onomatopoeia. Let's have a look at the little poem down the bottom. I've got a very small one there that we can have a look. And let's see if we can find a word that sounds like its meaning. So this one's called fossils, so it's going to be about bones. I wonder what sound bones would make if they were all put together in a pile. So have a read. At midnight in the museum hall, the fossils gathered for a ball. There were no dreams or saxophones, but just the clatter of their bones. Okay, so can you pick which was the onomatopoeia word in here? Where is an example of onomatopoeia in there? Remember, onomatopoeia, there's usually a sound word. So in this case, the sound is clatter. The bones make a clatter sound. And when you say the word clatter, it almost sounds, it sounds like a clatter, okay, like a bit of a clunking noise, or so we've got clatter. So, but just the clatter of their bones is the onomatopoeia. Okay, so we have 4 language features we've looked at so far, boys, so we need to try and remember these ones. The similes, they're the ones when we're comparing two things using like or as. Okay, so bold like an eagle, proud like a peacock, ugly as sin. Okay. Alliteration, when that same sound is repeated at the beginning of words that are close together. For example, puppy punched, kitten kicked, ripe raspberry. We have rhyming. Rhyming makes poems interesting and fun to read as well. It gives us a bit of a rhythm and a sound to it. And remember, we record our rhyming structure by putting a letter at the end of each line And if the lines rhyme, we give it the same letter, like grace and face. Then we looked at onomatopoeia. Now, onomatopoeia are the words that sound like their meaning. So, clap, clap, boom, okay, bang, crash, swish, those kinds of words that you usually would see in cartoons. They're used in poems because they make the poem fun to read, and they can also visualize in your brain, so you can see the picture in your mind. If something's going boom, you can either hear it hitting or see it exploding in your mind. Okay, so all these poems, all these language features, we will be looking at a few different poems during this unit, and this is the first one that we can look at, is Greedy Little Grace, the one we read earlier. Now, this one is a funny poem. It's meant to be a funny poem, okay? And it's okay for us to... Sorry, I'm just going to go in a little bit further here so you can see this a little bit clearer. Whoops. Okay. It's okay for us to not like poems. We can say that they aren't very good. We can say they're boring, or we can say we didn't find them very interesting, but we have to have a reason why. So you can speak your mind about a poem, but have a reason why. And that's what we call evidence. So we're using evidence. We're giving a reason why we don't like something. So for this poem here, Greedy Little Grace, we can have an opinion about it, but we have to say why we don't like it, or why we do like it. So I can read it one more time. I'll make it a little bit bigger. And as I'm reading it, I want you to think about why you might like it, or why you might not like this poem. So things you might want to be looking for is what the poem might remind you of. Maybe it reminds you of a certain person. Maybe it reminds you of the actions of somebody that are good or bad. Maybe it makes you laugh. So, and certain lines of it makes you laugh. So that you might like it for that reason. So have a think as I read through it one more time. So there was a greedy little girl called Grace, who liked to shovel food non-stop into her greedy face. Her parents said, "Oh, Gracie dear, must you eat like that?" But greedy little Grace just laughed and ate the family cat. Meow. Her mother cried, "My lovely cat, I'm really going to miss her." But greedy little Grace just burped and ate her little sister. Her father yelled, "This gluttony is not good for your health." But greedy little Grace just licked her lips, and then she ate herself. Okay, so again, thinking of certain lines in that poem that you think might be funny, that could be a reason to like it, or things you don't like it. Maybe it reminds you of somebody, or something you've done in the past. So here's some examples. So try and finish these sentences. I'll make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay, finishing the sentences. I like or dislike the poem Greedy Little Grace by Andy Griffiths. So you have to choose one or the other. One reason I like or dislike the poem is the poem makes me think about. So you try and finish those 3 sentences, and I want you to finish those 3 sentences and email them to me. Okay, I'm going to put my email on the screen. Here we go. So when you're finished, these sentences, you're going to be emailing them to me at acampf1@eq.edu.au. Now before you do that, I'm going to give you an example so you can have a look at an example that I've done that might be able to help you. So I've said I dislike the poem. Okay, I just made it a little bit harder for myself, but I dislike the poem Greedy Little Grace by Andy Griffiths. So all I've done on that one is I've written the same sentence, but I've used this one word, dislike. Okay, I've just rewritten it. Then I've gone, one reason I dislike the poem is, because this poem doesn't express any feelings about the topic. It is more like a story with lines like, there was a gritty girl called Grace in the first stanza. So a lot of stories will start off with, there once was a girl named, or there once was a boy who, okay, and I kind of find those a little bit boring myself. Now this is my personal opinion. So it's up to you to say why you like or dislike, but make sure you use an example, like I have here, from the poem to show why you dislike it. So for this one, it just reminds me of a normal storybook. There was a greedy girl called Grace. Okay, so I've said that's the reason I dislike it. It reminds me of a story more than a poem. Okay, my last sentence that I have to finish. This poem makes me think about. So here we've done here. This poem makes me think about a misbehaved child who needs to learn some manners. Alright, so this is an adult's perspective and a mother's perspective, but you might have a completely different idea of why you like or dislike Greedy Little Grace. So what I'd like you to do is you can go back on this video and pause it on the poem, have a read through it yourself, and then I want you to finish these 3 sentences and email them to me on this email down here when you finish them. Before Friday would be really cool. Thank you very much. See you later, boys.